Have you ever had a moment where the world stops? Not in some poetic, beautiful way, but in that sudden, punch to the gut kind of silence where even your breath feels too loud. I remember that moment clearly. I was lying in a hospital bed, alone in the middle of labor, breathing through the pain, gripping the side rails, praying for strength. And he, the man I married, the man who was supposed to hold my hand through it all, was gone, disappeared. No message, no excuse, just gone. Now, if you've lived long enough, and I know many of you watching have lived through your fair share of storms, you know what betrayal feels like. But there's a special kind of betrayal that hits different when you're at your most vulnerable, when your body is literally breaking open to bring life into this world, and the person you trusted the most decides to vanish. Not by accident, but by choice. The nurse came in and tried to smile gently. "Would you like me to try calling him again?" she asked. I shook my head, because deep down I already knew. He wasn't at work. He wasn't stuck in traffic. He was with her. Her? The woman I had suspected for months. The one he swore was just a friend. Funny how friends don't text each other late at night or delete call logs. But I had convinced myself not to jump to conclusions. I had told myself I was being paranoid, that I was hormonal, that I was just scared because of the baby. Turns out I wasn't wrong. I was just too kind, too patient, too forgiving. Now, if you're listening to this and thinking, "I've been there," you're not alone. Whether it happened in your 20s or your 60s, heartbreak doesn't care how old you are. Betrayal doesn't check your birth date before it breaks you. But what I want you to know, truly know, is that you're never too old to take your power back. That day in the hospital, I made a promise to myself, a quiet one. No rage, no threats, no screaming. Just a calm, unshakable decision. This will not be the end of my story. This will be the beginning of who I become. Now let me tell you something important. Pain is not the enemy. Pain is the fuel. And when you've lived long enough, when you've raised kids, buried parents, sacrificed dreams, you learn that pain is not something to run from. It's something to build from. So I started building. Slowly, quietly, carefully. I had a newborn in my arms, a mountain of hospital bills, and a broken heart. But I also had something he didn't count on. I had time. Not the kind of time that rushes or panics. Not the kind of time that scrambles to prove something. I had the kind of time that sharpens a blade, that builds a plan, that knows how to strike only when it matters. People like him, they live fast. They love shortcuts. They want drama, chaos, thrills. But me, I had wisdom, I had discipline, and I had one secret weapon he didn't see coming. I knew the truth about the baby. See, what he didn't realize, what he couldn't even imagine, was that when he walked out on me in that hospital room, he walked away from more than just his partner. He walked away from his own child. Because while I was in labor, while he was off sneaking around with her, something unexpected happened. The doctor gave me news I hadn't seen coming. The blood type didn't match. And just like that, everything clicked. Every doubt, every lie, every strange look from his mother. It all came rushing back. The child wasn't his, and the moment I heard it, you might think I felt ashamed. Embarrassed, but no. I felt powerful. Because I knew exactly what to do. You see, revenge isn't always about fire and fury. Sometimes, revenge is patience, precision, poise. So I smiled, I held my baby in my arms, and I said nothing. Not to him, not to anyone. I let him come back. I let him stand there with his crocodile tears and his weak excuses. I let him pretend to be the doting father. I let him hold the baby in front of his boss at that company dinner. He dragged me to 6 weeks later. I let him show off our perfect little family. And then, when he looked over at his boss and proudly said, "She looks just like me," I handed the manila envelope across the table, slowly, calmly. And I said, "Actually, she doesn't." But inside was the birth certificate. Updated, correct, listing the biological father's name. Not his boss. The same man who had invited us to the dinner. Looked down at it, blinked, and then looked back up at him. The silence that followed was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. Because in that moment, he lost everything he thought he had control over, his image, his lies, his leverage, and I gained something priceless. Not just freedom, not just justice. I gained me. If you're sitting there right now thinking, But it's too late for me. Let me stop you. It is never too late to rise, not at 60, not at 70, not even at 80. I don't care if your heart's been broken in half or your knees ache every morning. You're still breathing, and that means you've still got fire in you. You don't need to yell. You don't need to fight. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You just need to remember that your story isn't finished. Your strength didn't vanish just because someone else couldn't see it. And your power, it's still right there, waiting for you to pick it up. Because sometimes, the best revenge is becoming everything they never believed you could be. He sat there frozen, holding a fork in midair like it would somehow protect him from what had just been exposed. His boss cleared his throat awkwardly. The woman sitting next to him, someone I'd seen around the office once or twice, quietly reached for her wine glass and looked away, pretending not to notice the scene unraveling in front of her. I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to, because when truth walks in, lies scatter on their own. Now let me tell you something you've probably already learned in your life. You don't need to burn bridges with people who lit the match themselves. And in that moment, I realized that walking away isn't weakness. It's strategy. It's grace. It's dignity. Especially when you walk away, knowing they're going to spend the rest of their life haunted by the memory of the moment they lost you. He chased me to the parking lot, of course, with apologies, with fake tears, with desperate little explanations that sounded like a man drowning in his own excuses. "You embarrassed me in front of my boss," he said. I stopped and turned to him. I didn't yell. I didn't insult him. I simply looked him in the eye and said, "No. You embarrassed yourself the day you abandoned your family." Then I got in the car, buckled my daughter in, and drove away. That was the night I truly understood something that changed my entire perspective. Peace is louder than chaos when you stop giving it attention. See, here's the thing: when you're younger, you think strength means fighting. You think it means standing up, calling people out, proving your point. And sometimes, yes, that's necessary. But the older I've gotten, and maybe you can relate to this, I've found that true power doesn't always come with noise. Sometimes it looks like silence, like calm, like letting go. Not because you're giving up, but because you've outgrown the war. I went home that night and made myself a promise. Not about revenge, not about him, but about who I was going to become. Because you know what? I had spent too many years pouring into someone who was running on empty, and I realized it was time I took that same energy and poured it into me. I started with small things: waking up early, writing again, something I hadn't done since college, drinking more water, listening to music in the kitchen while I made breakfast. These might sound like tiny, ordinary things, but when you've been ignored, disrespected, or abandoned, reclaiming your joy in the little rituals is an act of rebellion. I started walking more, not just for exercise, but for clarity. There's something healing about moving your body when your heart has been broken. One foot in front of the other, one day at a time. With every step, I remembered that I was still alive, still strong, still worthy of something better. And slowly, the fog started to lift. I began reconnecting with friends I hadn't seen in years. People who had quietly drifted away because they never wanted to say what they really thought of my marriage. And when they welcomed me back with open arms, I didn't feel shame. I felt freedom. Because starting over doesn't mean starting from nothing. It means starting from experience. Now listen. I know this part of the story might sound like the peaceful interlude before the next storm, but it's more than that. It's the part most people skip when they talk about transformation. They love to show the before and after, the heartbreak and the comeback. But they skip the middle, the slow days, the quiet healing, the moments when you're not quite broken anymore, but you're not yet whole either. That middle space is where your strength is rebuilt. I remember one afternoon, my daughter was napping, and I sat on the couch with a journal in my lap. I wrote down a single question: what do I want now? Not what do I regret? Not what did I lose? Not what did he take from me? But what do I want? Now, in this new chapter, in this new identity, as a woman who's been cracked wide open and still refuses to stop blooming, The answer came slowly but clearly. I wanted joy, stability, integrity. I wanted to show my daughter what it looks like to rise without bitterness, to win without cruelty, to rebuild without begging anyone to help me hold the pieces. I started applying for jobs again, not because I needed to prove anything to anyone, but because I wanted to build something of my own. I was older than most of the applicants, had taken years off to raise a child, but I walked into those interviews with confidence because I knew something no one else in the room did. I had survived. And when you've survived betrayal, abandonment, and the gut-wrenching silence of a hospital room with no one by your side, you become unshakable. One company, a local creative firm, saw that fire in me. They hired me. Within a year, I wasn't just an employee. I was running their community outreach division. 2 years later, I was sitting across from their board with a proposal in hand to start my own branch. And they backed me, because what started as revenge became reinvention, not by accident, but by intention. Every decision I made after that night was deliberate. No more shrinking. No more second-guessing. No more apologies for taking up space. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just letting the truth expose someone. It's building a life so vibrant, so strong, and so joyful that people who tried to break you end up watching from the sidelines, in silence. The first time I ran into him again, I almost didn't recognize him. It was a grocery store, of all places. On a quiet Sunday morning, I was reaching for a box of cereal. My daughter skipping down the aisle humming to herself, and there he was. Thinner, tired-looking, hollow even. Like someone had turned the brightness down on him and forgotten to turn it back up. He noticed me a second too late, tried to fix his posture, adjust his shirt, flash that same tired smile he used when he didn't know what else to say. I didn't give him the chance to speak, I just smiled, not out of malice, not out of smugness, but out of peace. The kind of peace that comes when you finally let go of needing closure from someone who's incapable of giving it. And I could tell from the way his eyes followed me down the aisle that he still hadn't found it. Closure isn't something you get from others. It's something you give to yourself. And I had done exactly that. In the 2 years since I had walked away, I had built a life that didn't just function without him. It thrived. I had a career I was proud of, a child who laughed freely, a circle of friends who reminded me what support actually feels like. But most importantly, I had a version of myself I barely recognized. In the best way. I looked in the mirror one morning, not too long after our grocery store run-in, and something struck me. I didn't see a woman who had been cheated on. I didn't see a single mother. I didn't even see someone who had been betrayed during childbirth. I saw a woman who didn't quit, and I say this to you now, whether you're 60, 70, or beyond, because I know how easy it is to think the best parts of life are behind you. To believe that the world has already handed you all the pain you can handle, and all you can do now is manage what's left. But that's a lie, and you need to know it. Because here's the truth sometimes. Life doesn't begin until after you've been broken. Sometimes, the best chapters are the ones you write with your own hands, not the ones others try to write for you. You have wisdom now. You have grit. You've lived. You've endured. That makes you dangerous in the best way. You don't need revenge soaked in rage. You need redemption soaked in purpose. I remember when I finally framed that birth certificate. Not out of spite, not to hang it on a wall. I framed it and tucked it away in a drawer. A quiet reminder of a moment when everything changed. Not because of what he did, but because of what I chose to do next. It wasn't about hurting him. It was about healing me. So many people spend their lives trying to prove something to those who wronged them. But the greatest power you'll ever hold isn't in making them watch you rise. It's in no longer caring if they see it at all. My daughter is older now, wiser beyond her years, sharp as a tack, and full of that same quiet fire I see in the mirror. One day, she asked me, "Mom, what happened with my birth dad?" And I told her the truth. Simply, without bitterness, without drama. "Someone once made a very selfish choice," I said. "But that choice helped me become strong enough to raise you the right way." She nodded, like she already understood more than most adults ever will. And then she hugged me. That hug, That moment of complete, unconditional trust was worth more than any revenge plot I could have dreamed of. Because in the end, the legacy I leave behind won't be the hurt I endured. It'll be the strength I built because of it. So if you're watching this today, wondering if it's too late to reinvent yourself, I want you to look at my story and understand something loud and clear. The version of you that's been through hell and back is still here for a reason. You're still breathing. That means you still get to choose. Choose healing. Choose dignity. Choose becoming so strong, so steady, so radiant that the people who once mistook your kindness for weakness wouldn't dare approach your peace now. They say revenge is best served cold, but I believe it's best served in silence, in success, in self-respect. You don't need them to fall. You just need to keep rising. Let's bring it home. With grace and fire, there's something sacred about rising quietly, not needing applause, not needing validation. Just waking up each day, doing the work, and watching your life slowly become something unrecognizable. In the most beautiful way. I'm not the same woman I was when I walked into that delivery room alone. That woman was scared, hopeful, and still trying to make sense of the betrayal. She was waiting for someone to choose her. But now, I don't wait for anyone to choose me. I am the choice, you see. Life has a funny way of testing you right before it transforms you. It shatters everything you thought was secure so it can show you where your real foundation is. And I'll tell you this. When you rebuild yourself without illusions, when you rise without bitterness, you don't just get stronger, you get untouchable. People used to ask me, "Don't you ever wish he got what he deserved?" And I smile now because they don't understand. He did. He lost the woman who would have stood by him for a lifetime. He lost the chance to watch his daughter take her first steps, say her first words, graduate preschool with a crown of paper stars on her head and a spark in her eyes. He lost Sunday morning pancakes and messy bedtime stories. He lost growing old beside someone who actually cared. That was the cost of his choices. And I got my peace. I got my strength. I got a daughter who's growing up in a home filled with laughter, discipline, love, and safety. A home where she'll never see her mother beg for respect that should have been given freely. You know, people don't talk enough about what healing actually looks like. It's not pretty Instagram quotes or deep conversations over tea. It's the night you sit on your kitchen floor because you're overwhelmed. But you don't reach out to the person who broke you. It's walking past the places that used to hold memories and not feeling the sting anymore. It's realizing you haven't thought about them all day, and then choosing not to think about them at all. That's when you know. That's when you're free. And if you're watching this, maybe you've been through something similar. Maybe your betrayal came from someone you trusted. Maybe they didn't walk away during childbirth, but they walked away when life got hard, when aging brought its challenges, or when you simply stopped being convenient. Let me tell you something no one else might say to you out loud. You didn't deserve that. It wasn't your fault. And more importantly, it's not your ending. The truth is, no matter how old we are still becoming, still learning, still shedding layers of what hurt us, still discovering just how powerful we can be once we stop shrinking for others. You don't need youth to start over. You need courage. You don't need perfection. You need clarity. And you don't need anyone's permission to become someone unrecognizably brilliant after the world counted you out. In my case, betrayal lit the fire, but it was self-respect that kept it burning. And when I look at my life now, I don't see a woman who was cheated on. I see a leader, a protector, a mother, a builder. I see someone who didn't just survive the storm. She rebuilt her own sky, and so can you. So wherever you are, whether you're sitting in a quiet house wondering if it's too late, or staring out a window trying to remember who you were before the hurt, hear me now, it is never too late to start over. It is never too late to say, "This is not how my story ends," and is never too late to create a life so full of meaning, so rooted in truth, that even the memory of betrayal becomes nothing more than a distant echo. You don't have to scream for justice. You don't have to chase revenge. Sometimes, all you have to do is rise and let them watch in silence. If this story stirred something in you, share it. Speak your truth in the comments. Let others know they're not alone, because we heal in community. We rise together. And when one of us finds the courage to say, enough, we give someone else the courage to begin. So like this video, subscribe to the channel, stay close, because this space is for those who've been broken, doubted, and underestimated but never destroyed. Here's to living your second act louder, freer, and stronger than ever before. Because this is who you become when the world thought you wouldn't make it. And oh, how beautiful that becoming is.